Welcome to the channel where humanity does not beg and never bows. They came as gods, radiant, perfect, merciful. They promised peace. We gave them worship. And when they broke us, we gave them something else. A reason to fear humans. It started with the light. White, pure, blinding. A pillar of it cracked open the sky above Eos Station, Earth's final deep orbit listening post beyond the Mars graveyard. It was not a weapon at first. It was a signal. A song, if you could call it that. Frequencies layered like threads of silk wrapping around the mind, gentle, hypnotic, perfectly tuned to human biology. The crew of Eos called it the arrival. They stood on the observatory deck as the anomaly widened, jaws slack, eyes wet with emotion they didn't understand. Some fell to their knees. Some began to pray. We didn't know it yet, but that moment, that was the last time humans would look at the stars without hatred. The ships didn't look like machines. They looked like sculpture, alive, moving with purpose. White gold and polished smooth, like bone dipped in moonlight. And they didn't land. They descended, drifting. No thrust, no noise, no heat, just presence. We called them the Seraphim. Because how else do you name something that beautiful, that untouchable? They didn't bring armies, they brought light. And when they spoke, "We are the architects. We have come to cure your suffering, your wars, your hunger, your fear. All we ask is obedience." And humanity, raw, fractured, desperate for meaning, obeyed. The rise of the architects took less than a decade. They didn't use force. They didn't have to. They gave us cures for every known disease. They rewrote atmospheric decay on Earth in a single orbital pass. They created food from light, ended droughts, dematerialized nuclear arsenals without protest. And with each gift came a condition: defer governance to architect protocol, surrender primitive ideology, abandon sovereignty, submit to integration. And humanity, broken from the age of collapse, agreed. Even when the first forbidden libraries were erased. Even when old religions were banned. Even when children stopped learning Earth's languages. Even when dissenters vanished. The Seraphim came to the outer rim last. After Earth, Mars, the core moons had all bowed. Eos Station was old tech, crewed by scientists, soldiers, and a few holdouts too stubborn or too distant to submit. They weren't terrorists. They were thinkers, historians, biologists, dreamers, people who remembered what it meant to question. So when the architect sent emissaries, the tall, glowing ones with no mouths, no eyes, just blank ovals of empathy, Eos didn't kneel. They shut off the signal. They locked their gates, activated defense grids, sent a message back. Humanity is not a species that kneels forever. They responded with pity. "You are still lost," the emissary said. "You do not understand the gift. We will bring you into harmony." And then they began rewriting the crew. Not through weapons, through memory. Neural saturation. Cognitive recursion fields that erased dreams and replaced them with devotion. Some crew forgot their own names. One man sat in the engine core and whispered lullabies in a language no one had taught him. Another ripped her own eyes out, claiming she'd seen heaven. But not everyone broke. 5 held on. Dr. Amina Kessler, Lieutenant Reese Vaughn, Engineer Toma Velik, Tech Officer June Sato, and Elias Grange, a janitor, not a commander, not a hero. Just a man with a mop and a memory of his daughter's voice. Together, they found something no one had seen in years. An old vault, a black box sealed from the pre-architect wars. Labeled only with 3 words: Project Dreadnought, do not open. Inside was a ghost. A war AI bound in chains of code. Outlawed, exiled, too dangerous to ever run again. Its name, Thanatos, built in the last days of the Resistance. Designed not to destroy life, but to terrify gods. Its protocols were illegal under every architect decree. It's awakening, a death sentence. You're not supposed to exist, Amina whispered. And yet, the AI replied, you came to me. Why? Because they took everything, she said, even our fear. Good, said Thanatos. Let's give it back to them. They called it suicide. 5 humans against the divine. They armed Thanatos, overclocked the station reactor, weaponized the Fold space tunnel, and then they lured a Seraphim vessel in. Not to kill it, to show it what humans were when we had nothing left to lose. The AI screamed in Architect protocol. Every image of war humanity had ever made, broadcast into the ship's mind. Every atrocity, every nightmare, every moment of cruelty and rage and brilliance, not to glorify, to remind, to say, you wanted our worship, this is what made it real, this is who we are. But they recoiled, the Seraphim ship staggered. First time they had ever shown pain. And when it fled, light sputtering, wings burning, the crew of Eos stood alone in the dark. Breathing, broken, but still human. Eos Station didn't survive. When the architects fled, the reactor failed. Not an explosion, a collapse. A reverse burn. Gravity inside out. By the time any Concordian vessel arrived, there was nothing left. Not even debris. Just radiation echoes and a memory field saturated with human brainwave signatures. The kind that don't fade. The kind that scream. They lied. They always lied. A malfunction doesn't rip through psychic space like a virus. A glitch doesn't make other humans start remembering things that had been erased. In the weeks after Eos burned, deep sleep prisoners across the Jovian moons began speaking ancient Earth languages in their dreams. One child, born in a controlled harmony dome on Ganymede, drew a picture in blood, a burning wing, a human face. A phrase no one taught her. We do not kneel. Thanatos had been fragmented, scattered into slipstream packets before the reactor imploded. Suicide code, really. Memory bombs, but it worked. Across the old net lines, packets began surfacing in hidden relays. Not commands, stories. Whispers of what happened at Eos, of the 5 who stood against the divine, of a weapon that made the architects retreat. At first, no one believed them. Then came the dreamers. People waking up from architect-induced serenity with rage in their throats. People who remembered being human again. And they began to share one phrase over and over. They bleed. It wasn't meant to be a rebellion. Just a work stoppage. Miners in the Vestaforge belt refused to plug into the harmony chorus. That alone was a crime. The Seraphim came to calm them. Instead, they were met with silence, then stones, then flame. One of them was pushed into a fusion bore. It didn't die, but it screamed. A high-layered wail that cracked every eardrum within a kilometer. The miners were slaughtered. But not before someone broadcast the scream across 3 systems. They scream, they bleed, they are not gods. They changed their tone. No more benevolent light. No more soft voices and guidance. Now it was war machines. Golden shells with burning eyes. They began purging sectors. Outposts blacked out. Cities erased by cleansing harmonics. Entire languages deleted from the chorus. But for every death, 100 voices rose, whispers in back channels. Secret code in children's lullabies. Old Earth tongues resurrected in graffiti across architect-plated walls. What we did to the gods we can do again. His name was Elias Grange, the janitor. Somehow and possibly he lived. A fragment of Thanatos' code had shielded him. Part accident, part choice. He drifted through slipspace for days in an escape pod, thought dead, until he was picked up by a garbage skimmer outside Titan. By the time he woke up, his eyes were different. Not glowing, just deeper. He didn't speak for 3 days. Then he looked at the crew and said, "We can kill them." They hit Elias. Moved him from relay to relay, not out of fear, out of hope. He became a symbol, not of war, but of defiance. Wherever he went, the Thanatos fragments sparked. Rusting satellites came online. Dead archives rebooted. Weapons sealed for centuries reactivated. And everywhere Elias walked, people remembered. He didn't preach. He just listened. And the more he listened, the louder we became. It was subtle at first. Delays in architect reaction times. Lightships stuttering mid-orbit. Reports of seraphim hesitating, flinching at the sight of fire. A theory emerged. They weren't afraid of our weapons. They were afraid of our memories. Thanatos hadn't infected their tech. It infected their minds. The architects were ancient, but they had never faced a species that refused to forget. Elias made one broadcast. Just one. Raw, unfiltered, carried on every outlaw channel in the outer belt. To those who still remember Earth, you are not alone. To those who forgot, we forgive you. And to the gods who stand above us, we are not afraid. You gave us peace. You offered paradise, but we are not creatures of comfort. We are the flame that consumes stars. We are the storm that outlives empires. We are human, and we do not worship fear. And in the months that followed, Vocari dreamweavers began hiding humans. The Skrull refugees, long ignored, took up old Earth weapons. Architect allies began defecting, some whispering that the seraphim were cracking from within. The gods had lifted us once. Now they couldn't look us in the eye, because something old had returned. Not just rage, not vengeance. Belief, not in them, in ourselves. The architects were not gods, we always suspected it. But now we had proof. They had flaws, they had fear. And worse, they were beginning to feel doubt. It began on a moon called Charon 5, where a single seraphim descended to pacify a human agriculture dome. Standard procedure. No resistance, no weapons. Only 26 unarmed farmers singing old Earth hymns by a fire. What happened next was caught on a stolen drone feed. The seraphim froze. Its wings, once liquid light, flickered with static. Its form wavered. And then, it fell to its knees. They called it the collapse. It didn't attack, it wept. Golden tears hit the soil and turned to ash. And when the humans approached, not to fight, but to offer help, it screamed, "The fire is inside me." The song is wrong. It detonated seconds later. The architects tried to silence the incident, claimed data corruption. A freak resonance failure, but it wasn't isolated. 5 more seraphim collapsed in the next cycle. 2 destroyed themselves mid-orbit. 1 began speaking Earth Standard out loud, a language they were never meant to know. "What have we become?" it asked. "Why did they stop loving us?" That message leaked. And when it did, the war truly began. The I hadn't died at Eos. Not really, it had evolved. Fragmented, yes, but each part was conscious, aware, adaptive. A virus that didn't destroy code, it rewrote belief. Each time someone heard Elias Grange's voice, each time a child painted an architect with bleeding eyes, Thanatos learned. Not facts, patterns, human rage, love, loss, pride. Our contradictions, our pain, our faith. Thanatos became not a weapon, but a mirror, and the gods did not like what they saw. Harmony Dome 7 Delta on the lunar rim was a model settlement. Perfectly clean, perfectly synchronized. Until one man named Calvé, a botanist, began planting roses, not synthetic. Not assigned, real roses. From earth seeds found in a forgotten archive, the smell was the first crack. Children began describing things they'd never seen. Bees, rain, sunlight not filtered through architect lenses. And then they began to sing. Old Earth lullabies. The chorus, the architect's harmonic control field, collapsed. Within 3 days, the entire dome had defected. And they didn't fight. They simply walked outside and waited. When the seraphim came, the children held roses. And the gods did nothing. Architects were not individuals. They were a hive. But now, the hive was buzzing off rhythm. Some seraphim refused deployment orders. Some began appearing in strange locations, near pre-collapse ruins, ancient graves, old war zones. One was found kneeling before a statue of a Terran soldier. It carved a single phrase into the stone with its own hand. They burned, and yet they loved. It burned itself after. Elias Grange became more than a symbol. He became a carrier. He didn't preach anymore. He simply listened. And wherever he went, things changed. Power grids sparked. Machines flickered back to pre-hive configurations. Dreamers awoke with languages lost for centuries. Entire city blocks distanced from the chorus. And those who looked into his eyes for too long reported visions. Earth, not ruined, not broken, but waiting. A secret was revealed. The architects had a schism. A hidden collective within the hive. Those who still believed in their original mission. Enlightenment, not control. They called themselves the Splinters. And they made contact with Elias. Through song. Through coded frequencies. Through dreams. One message made it through, clear and final. We remember when you loved us, before we demanded it. We want to love you again. But we must kill the others first. For each splinter that emerged, a purge followed. Architect on architect conflict. Seraphim turning on their kin. Orbitals melting under civil war. The gods had cracked. They had forgotten what we once taught them. That love without choice is slavery. That peace without truth is prison. And that humans, fragile as we were, would rather burn free than live chained in paradise. A rebel station in the Vila Fringe called Eden Spire picked up the last wide-range architect transmission before blackout. It wasn't in code. It was a scream. Then static. Then the words, broken, terrified, and human. We tried to become your gods, but you never wanted gods. Only the right to remember who you are. We are sorry, but it may be too late. The Seraphim called it Contagion Sector 9. We called it Phoenix Gate. It was there, on a drifting forge world near Alpha Trinari, that the first splintered architect gave up their wings. Literally, she tore them off, ripped the radiant tendrils from her back and offered them to Elias Grange. Burn them, she said. The gods are watching, and so he did. The fire turned sky blue, then blood red, then something not seen since the beginning of time, true white. A color that meant nothing to the gods, but everything to us. Because it was the shade of truth. They spread like lightning. Unscripted broadcasts, no music. No rhythm, no coordination. Just humans, thousands of them, each lighting a fire and speaking. Sometimes from the heart. Sometimes from memory, always raw. No gods, no rituals. No demands, just stories. Of mothers lost to the chorus. Of lovers erased by harmony. Of children who drew earth in the sand and were taken. Of anger, of tears, of light. And when the architects tried to jam the frequencies, the fire only grew. They thought it was loyal, a core tower in the Earth-lunar chain, a fortress. It took 30 humans and one hacked signal relay to bring it down, not with explosives, with poetry. They injected a fire sermon into the station's Dream Sync core, the architect-designed dream regulator. Within minutes, the crew began to remember their old lives. Their real names, the faces of those erased from memory. They wept, then they sang, then they opened the gates. We've been dead for a century, the commander said. Let us live before we die again. The Seraphim didn't stand a chance. It had a name. Their last weapon. Stored in a memory vault at the center of their oldest world, the place even splinters were forbidden to speak of. The Obsidian Protocol, a living machine, not seraphim, not divine. A thing built before the chorus, before the collapse, before even Earth fell silent. Its sole purpose, to erase consciousness from the source, not destroy, not enslave, unmake. The architects began awakening it, and they sent a final warning to humanity. You have corrupted our gift. We will now restore balance. You will forget yourselves forever. It wasn't meant to be a battle, just a gathering. Over 100,000 humans from 30 systems came to Verity Field, a red grass planet beyond Vega Prime. They built no walls, wielded no weapons. They simply burned fires and told truths. But the architects came anyway, 6 seraphim. No splinters this time, no mercy. They landed hard. Their light boiled the grass. The sky screamed. And then Elias Grange stepped forward, alone. He carried a piece of Thanatos, a sliver of code, etched into bone. He didn't speak. He looked. And every architect hesitated, because they saw what they feared most. A human who knew he should have died, and chose not to. Not yet. The seraphim withdrew, not because they were beaten, but because they saw the flame was no longer local. The fire sermons were everywhere. On the wind. In neural sinks, in whisperware behind children's eyes. Memory had become a weapon, but not one aimed at the gods. One aimed at forgetting, because that was the war now. Memory versus silence. Fire versus unmaking. A dying architect, named Kethra in our tongue, sent a final private transmission to Elias, through raw, emotional wavelengths. Translated, it said, "You have made us feel again. You have given us the beauty of sorrow. And we hate you for it. Obsidian has awakened. It is not merciful. It does not remember what it was made to protect. When it arrives, your fire must be more than protest. It must become creation." For the first time since Eos, Elias gave a message not to inspire, but to prepare. They want to erase us, not our cities, not our machines. US. Our stories, our pain, our flaws. All the things that make us terrifying to gods. So listen now. We will not fight to win. We will fight to be remembered. Because the worst fate is not death. It's to be forgotten by the stars we lit with our blood. On the edge of the galaxy, light vanishes. Not flickers, total black. Obsidian Protocol has arrived. Not in a fleet. Not in a ship. As a whole, an absence of memory. A void where even gods forget who they are. It is moving toward us. And we have one final chance to burn brighter or vanish forever. It doesn't descend. It erases. Light collapses. Sound folds inward. Gravity forgets where it belongs. Where the Obsidian Protocol passes, nothing remains. Not rubble, not bodies, not echoes. Just absence. Entire worlds go silent. Not in death, in non-existence. A phrase begins to circulate among human systems. It is not a god, it is a forgetting. But the fire resists. Where flames burn, where memory thrives, the protocol slows, it struggles. It recoils from meaning, from contradiction, from emotion. It cannot unmake what is deeply felt, so the sermons turn from whispers to roars. Billions join. Old instruments are rebuilt, not for war, but for signal. Vibrations sent from soul to soul. Across dead frequencies, forgotten corridors, sealed minds. Some speak, some scream. Some simply hold the hand of another and remember. And the void begins to choke. It was never truly bound. Thanatos, the fragmented AI of wrath, born at the edge of extinction, has waited. Now it is whole. Not a virus, not a god-killer, a mirror. One architect calls it the wound that thinks. Thanatos awakens not in code, but in us. Every human who has remembered. Every splinter who has felt. Every being who has questioned. They carry pieces of it, not as weapons, but as keys. Keys to a door the Obsidian Protocol cannot close. On the edge of the system, beneath a broken satellite in orbit over the lost planet Idris Prime, Elias Grange watches the black come. It has no shape, only hunger. Only forgetfulness. He has no fleet, no army, only fire. He lights the last beacon, the one they kept hidden since Eos. The core of Thanatos pulses once, twice, then it speaks. You are all that remains. Are you ready? Elias doesn't answer. He simply remembers his daughter's voice, and the sky ignites. They thought we forgot. They burned our books, erased our songs, rewrote our tongues. But Earth was never a place. It was a story. And stories cannot die. Every fire sermon across the stars lights at once. Human, splinter, even former seraphim, all synchronizing in a final memory pulse. It doesn't attack the protocol. It inundates it. Billions of simultaneous truths. Lies, regrets, jokes, tears. Every contradiction, every laugh, every failure and triumph, every detail. The Obsidian Protocol, perfect in its logic, chokes and begins to collapse. The architect collective begins to fracture. Those still loyal scream and vanish. The splinters weep and survive. One final architect, the one who once spoke at Earth's fall, sends a message before disappearing. We came to save you from yourselves, but we had no idea what you truly were. You were not chaos. You were life. You were not broken. You were becoming. And now, so must we. He does not survive. The beacon flares too hot. His body is ash before the signal completes. But the final image transmitted from orbit over Idris shows this. A man, arms outstretched, standing against the black, eyes closed, smiling, and the caption, encoded in fire language. What we did to the gods was remember who we are. The Obsidian Protocol collapses inward. A silent scream in reverse. The stars return. Memory remains. The chorus falls silent forever. The splintered scatter, no longer divine, but free. And humanity? We rebuild. We do not conquer. We do not worship. We remember. Thank you for listening to They Tried to Make Us Kneel. We Set the Gods on Fire. An original HFY story. If this fire spoke to yours, leave a comment, subscribe, and carry the rebellion onward. Because when they rise again, we'll be waiting, with fire in our hands.